I've found a new niche that Nikon is in. So we know they're like the sports and wildlife people. But did you also know that Nikon is the camera of choice for NASA astronauts?
I did not know that.
Yeah. This was a really interesting Petapixel article. And apparently, like on the International Space Station and stuff, they use Nikon cameras. And Nikon has actually released special firmware just for them. So something they did, I don't know if it was a few years ago or at some point, they had to give them firmware that like changed the way they number files on the cameras because, they're in space. They send a camera up there and they're just keeping it up there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they take like a lot of photos.
Oh, like they didn't want it to have 4 zeros on it and then have to recycle over?
Exactly. Yeah. Because they're like, we're going to use this camera to take 500,000 photos. Like we need numbering that will not like overlap. And so
that's good.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But the other one is that apparently, most cameras will do like special in-camera noise reduction if you do an exposure over like 1 second. But when you have these cameras in space, the cosmic rays in space basically like degrade the sensor. And so if you try and use, if you send like a normal camera up there and shoot for a while, then like you'll have all this weird noise from the cosmic rays having damaged the sensor. And so Nikon made this special firmware for their cameras that I guess that they, just for NASA or whatever, that will run like more noise reduction in the camera no matter how long the exposure is. So like even for shorter exposures, it does more noise reduction. And apparently that helps deal with that issue. So
awesome.
I don't know. I thought it was cool. I think it's neat that they, work with NASA and they're like, we'll make special firmware for you to support this. And it's pretty neat.
Do you think that they also have adapters to use those, 4 or 5 Carl Zeiss planar, like 0.7 lenses that they bought back in the 60s to adapt them to these Nikons?
Yeah, I'm sure they're using the tiny weight budget they get for sending up all this gear to send these super old camera lenses.
I mean, like, apparently they were made for shooting Dark Side of the Moon. And NASA's probably still paying on those things.
The International Space Station doesn't go to the dark side of the moon, right?
I'm just saying that, like, if they already...
Lucas, humanity has not been to the dark side of the moon since the 70s that we know of.
That's the spirit. I'm just saying, like, they got them in a closet over there. Maybe they adapt them to these Nikons.
Maybe you're right.
They're probably using a Noct.
Yeah, most likely.
That's why that other one's good. No, Plena doesn't sound like planar. Yeah, whatever. The cosmic rays remind me how I was voluntold, I guess, to shoot photos at a Christmas party recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I did a pretty good job this time. Last time I shot photos at a Christmas party, not good. This time, I had my 50 to 140.
Oh, yeah.
Had my 56 1.2, and I was pretty happy with all my photos, even the ones that were way too noisy. They were all great. But somebody thought it was a good idea to have a laser show going on.
Oh, no.
And I was like, shooting photos and stuff. And when I was looking at the photos later, like there was some like a smudge on the lens. Nothing bad happened. Just to be clear, nothing bad happened. But I like had a mild panic attack when I was like previewing images on the back of my camera at one point where I was like, did I just get lasered? Oh no.
You already broke that little screen hinge on the XH2S. You can't get it lasered.
Oh, geez.
That'd be a problem.
It's like, I don't even know why I should have thought about it immediately, but that's like cardinal rule. If you're going to shoot like in a concert or whatever, if there's lasers, like be really, really, really careful.
Yep.
So just screw up your camera so fast. Oh my gosh. Nothing bad happened.
That's good.
That's
good.
For like a split second.
Man, I guess that's an advantage to film.
Exactly.
Can't damage a film camera.
Can't get lasered.
Yep.
It's just one exposure.
Yep.
You're swapping out the sensor every time, basically. I mean, that's the fun part about it.
Yeah.
It's like now you get a shot for like different kinds of film, and it's not like Fuji where you're just stuck with these film simulations.
Yeah, these
and then they come out with new ones, and then they don't give them to you, and you're like, boy, sure would be cool to check out Reala or whatever. Sorry, too bad. That's not coming. We're never going to give it to you. I mean, I waited for Classic Neg for years. Nope, had to buy a new camera. But now I just like go buy film.
This exciting new technology called film photography.
You just don't understand, Daniel.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
Daniel, I'm switching to Sony.
It's finally happened. They've just released so many good cameras this year that you just can't handle Fuji anymore.
Yep.
Going to Sony.
I'm waiting for my new camera to come in the mail. It's a Himatic AF2.
Oh my gosh. Come on.
Made by Minolta, which Photo Division was sold to Sony in 2006.
I don't know if that counts.
Therefore, Sony camera. It has autofocus, Daniel.
I mean, I didn't even know that you could get autofocus on a film camera. That's how little I know about film.
Real deal. That was what piqued my interest. I also didn't know that until I then did know that. I think we've already talked about this whole rabbit hole I went down with point and shoots.
Yeah, maybe we mentioned it. Yeah, but you've gone deeper in the rabbit hole now.
I have bought in one. I found a sweetheart deal on the eBays, and I got myself a Himatic AF2, and it's coming my way. I'm so pumped. So excited. I was hoping to have it for this show. Yeah. But it's still in the mail, and I'm really sad about it.
Next week.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a good 2024 opener.
Oh, yeah.
For our film photography podcast that this apparently is.
I was going to tell you all about it, though. It has autofocus. You can half hold the shutter button. Focuses.
I can do that with my camera, too.
You can't do that with the first Auto Boy, or even the second one, I think, which is a Canon camera that, if you don't know, came out in the 70s or whatever.
Auto Boy. It really sounds like a budget superhero.
I kind of wanted the Auto Boy just for the name, and it also looks super duper cool. And if things go really well with my Himatic, there's a non-zero chance I buy an Auto Boy.
Yeah, there's probably an Auto Boy in your future.
Daniel, I just can't stop.
I can tell.
It's a real problem.
It's funny to me that you were talking earlier when we were off air about how busy you are and how much you have going on. And yet apparently one of the top priorities is doing tons of research on these super esoteric old film cameras.
There's so many things that go into it. If you asked me a year ago and you said, Lucas, there's a billion film cameras. Why? I would have said, I don't know. All it does is you just run film through it.
How hard could it be?
What could be different?
Yep.
What differentiates all these cameras? And it's does it have a good the lens matters so much. Everyone cares so much about these lenses. And if you can get one that has a Summilux or a Carl Zeiss lens on it, you're in for it. It's super great. I was trying to remember. I think it's those Contax ones have a Summilux lenses on it, which is why people love them. Also the Kardashians, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, this Minolta, the photo sensor thing, is on the front of the lens, which is an advantage because if you put a lens filter on there, it accounts for it in the exposure.
Wait, so what do you mean the photo sensor thing? What are you talking about?
You know how what do you call it? If you're a light meter, you have it has light, it has to meter the light to do the auto exposure.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And some cameras have it on the body, but some have it on the lens behind where the filter goes.
Interesting.
And that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
This one's
for all those ND filters you're going to use with your film.
Yep. So this one's fully automatic. I can't. It goes down to f2.8. I can't set it. Can't set the aperture. You can't set the shutter speed. You can pick the ISO because it's a film camera.
Wait, so it's not a fixed aperture. The aperture is variable, but the camera picks for you.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it picks between a few different ones, not all the stops or whatever.
Interesting.
So you'll never know what aperture you're shooting at. It's just straight up a fully automatic point and shoot. But this one has a self-winder. It's got a little thumb thing on it where you go crank to wind the film forward. And I feel like that tactile experience is a benefit. And also, I've been a little worried about the auto winding motors not working in a lot of these
with these old
1980,
cameras.
1975 point and shoots. Mm-hmm. A lot of them the flash doesn't work. But boy, am I super excited about having essentially a 35 millimeter point and shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna love that.
The point and shoots are gone. I mean, like there's the X100V, and like there's hasn't been a Sony R1 XR.
People seem to think that
since,
that
like,
camera might basically just be discontinued. Like considering they haven't come out with a new one, they think that line might just be dead.
Some people think that.
Yeah.
No. That's. I mean, it's not where they make the money. They make the money on Instax cameras.
No. Sorry. To clarify, the Fuji one is alive, but
You're talking about the Sony.
The Sony. Yeah. People think there may never be a third version of the RX1R.
Is it a dead market, or is it that it seems like so many people want this Fuji camera, and I don't understand why other people don't make it. Like Nikon was rumored to make a fixed lens point and shoot, and then they just didn't. They canceled the whole thing, and so you're stuck with like the Leica or the Fuji.
Yeah, you would think there would be room in the market for something between those two, right?
Right, and I guess like that's the whole point of cell phones is like if you're looking for a point and shoot that you just have with you, it's your cell phone.
That's probably what killed that market.
But that market is what I've been like diving into for the last, whatever, is because like I've always wanted like a cool point and shoot, and I'm like, a film one's the answer. It scratches all the itches.
Yeah, if you're interested in doing film, that probably does make the most sense.
Oh man, I'm so pumped. But like if you go back and look, and it's like from whatever 1976 to like whatever 2005, like Olympus and Pentax and Konica, that one camera brand, like Minolta and Nikon and Canon and Fuji, like all Contax, all of these camera brands, most of which don't exist anymore, had point and shoots, and they were all basically the same thing. If you go look at like a Nikon LAF2 or whatever it's called, and a Canon Autoboy, they're like the freaking same camera, except for like a few minor differences. But it's cool, and that was kind of like the fun part about researching all these point and shoots is there's like a billion different versions of all of them because they were out for 20 years. And it's like, oh, well, like, which version do I pick? And like, how do I compare? And blah, blah, blah. Which one has the neat lens? And now it's like, you can buy the Leica or you can buy the Fuji.
Mm-hmm. Well, and those film point and shoots are also a lot cheaper. So if you wanted to buy multiple, you could probably do that. Where it's, you're not going to buy multiple like a Q3s.
The original Olympus Pen F camera was a half frame. And I really want one. I really want a half frame camera.
Yeah, you mentioned that Kodak one.
Mm-hmm. But this one's old, which means it's better.
Oh my gosh!
And this concludes our second segment on cameras were better when the cameras were worse.
Backdoor segment. I like it.
Gotcha.
Nice. Well played.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, there was something else I was going to mention here, and I can't. Testing from. Oh, right. So I'm going to get this camera. Super pumped. I have to test it because
you don't know if it's going to work or not, right?
Yeah,
you didn't buy a tested one.
It could have bad light seals, like the shutter could be stuck. I don't know, and so I have to run a roll through it and get it developed to test it. But then also, I found a roll of Fuji Superia Extra from like 2004 in an old bag that was my dad's. And like, I want to shoot that roll. And
I would not do both of those at the same time.
And I've been dying to shoot that roll. And I'm like,
not going to know.
I can't, like, I really want to put that roll in my Minolta whenever I get it. But I know that I can't. And I just feel like I'm going to do it anyway.
If it was me, I feel like to test the camera, I would buy a cheap, known good roll of film, and I would run that through it as quickly as possible. Like I would try and like shoot all those pictures in like a couple of days.
That's why people shoot on Ilford black and white, because it's like $8. And most of the time when they're testing cameras, they're going to test them in black and white.
Yeah. I would do that. And then once you know the camera works, then you can use your fun film and take more time with your pictures and all that. But could just YOLO it too.
I'm probably going to take pictures a lot faster now too. Because I can just like snapshot.
You're not going to change any settings.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You just crank and shoot. Easy.
Crank and shoot.
Yep. It's going to be great.
Well, my prediction is that when we get to this show next week, you're going to have used that Fujifilm in that camera for the first roll. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, or like, I'll use the test roll and then I'll be like, cool, I tested it. But then I won't know because it's going to take a week to develop the pictures, Daniel. I mean, we're talking, it's like 2 weeks before I can even get around to anything. It's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what could anybody possibly do about this problem?
You know, if I was developing the film myself at home, the whole, process here would be way faster.
Maybe someday they'll make cameras that, you can take the pictures and then immediately see them afterward to see if they're any good. But,
Don't be crazy. What if they made film cameras that scanned the film themselves?
Oh, man. You would love that.
It's
Why
like a
not just-
little extra wide, like it has a little film scanner right next to the thing. So it takes the picture, and then whenever you crank it over, it scans it.
Why not just have it print out the completed picture?
Don't be crazy. That's impossible. How would you do that? There's no way to do that, Daniel.
Yeah, you're right.
Stop making things up.
Yeah. All right. I think we've got to get to this main topic, though.
Okay. So my next bullet point on this main topic is that I'm really mad that Fuji has all of these film simulations and they don't make actual film for the film simulations. Classic Chrome isn't even a real film, Daniel.
That's because they don't want to compete with their core market, man. They're making all these Fuji digital cameras. They're not going to make a film version. Then you're going to go buy this $50 camera on eBay and get the classic Chrome. I can't have that.
Yeah, but like Reala and like Provia and all this stuff. There's a lot of the stuff they just don't even make anymore. Like they just don't make it anymore. And I get that the market's smaller, but I feel like film's coming back, Daniel. They need maybe Fujifilm needs to
Make some film.
Make some film. Dang it. Oh, I got one more gripe here. Sorry, do you want to talk more about this Fujifilm thing?
No, I think I'm good. We're losing listeners left and right because this has turned into the Film Gear podcast.
No. You titled the podcast Camera of the Year 2023, which has been teased relentlessly on this podcast.
And this is just all clickbait.
Like, we're talking January. I was talking about Camera of the Year 2023, which we both know was destined to be the S1H Mark II.
Yes.
Here we are, into December.
And all we've got are film cameras.
Yeah. What happened? Point is, Hipstamatic. Have you heard of this thing?
I've heard of Hipstamatic.
Yes. I never heard of it until I started getting Instagram ads, and I was like, this is actually even too far for me. I just can't. I downloaded it because it's an app for your phone.
Yes.
And have you ever used this thing?
No.
Mm-mm. Oh boy.
What's wrong with it?
Oh my God. I'm just going to show you.
So there's like a little postage stamp looking thing. I mean, that app looks like a camera.
Yeah. So what I'm showing you is like the phone screen is the back of a camera.
Yeah.
And then inside the back of the camera is a cutout for the visual of what you're taking a picture of.
I mean, this is basically this is how iOS design was before iOS 7. Like whenever the Notes app looked like a leather notebook and stuff like that. Like This is what that is, but it's a camera
It's
app.
very skeuomorphic. And the whole concept here is that you can download new cameras and like pick old cameras, and then you take pictures like you're using an old camera, and your photos look bad.
Do you really think that's not for you? Because that sure does sound like it's for you.
Oh my God. It does. It sounds like it. It is not for me. But they teased everybody, and like they had these renders and everything. Like they were going to come out with a camera.
Yep.
And everyone was just so pumped. I was even like, I'm interested. Like maybe whatever the app is doing, you do that in like a physical camera. I feel like if you came out with a fixed lens version of that, you'd be immediately competing with Fujifilm, and it would be pretty cool. Turns out it was a skin for the app, and everyone lost their mind. Everyone, Daniel, the entire internet revolted because Hipstamatic was lying to people.
And yet, this is why you have downloaded that app and have it on your phone.
Yeah, no, it totally worked.
They
They were
totally
like,
worked.
download this thing to see what happens next. And I'm like, I want to know what happens next.
You're going to be using this as your primary camera app from now on.
Stop it. I shoot film now, Daniel. Okay, I think that's all of the pomp and preamble and etc. that I have brought to the table this holiday season. You're welcome. Let's do it. Camera of the Year 2023.
Finally. We're only like 20 minutes into the show.
Do you want to set the stage, or do you want me to?
No, I want you to. You've been talking about this for so long.
Okay. Camera of the Year 2023. We have multiple categories this time around. I don't even know what we did last year. It doesn't matter. So here's the rules. A camera has to be a camera, unless it's the category about cameras that aren't cameras, which is a category. Best to not camera. Anyway, has to have been released in 2023.
Now we've got to talk about that one. When we say released in 2023, do we mean announced or like purchasable?
So I think that we're both thinking of one specific elephant in the room.
I'm thinking of two specific elements in the room. Go ahead.
And in my opinion, you need to be able to purchase it and touch it.
Like a real person that's not a brand rep has to have been able to buy and use that camera.
That's kind of my limit here.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Which means for 2024, there will be certain cameras that will have been released in 2023 that can still be camera of the year 2024.
I mean, cameras that we have talked about. And since they can't be in these categories, we can just say, like, you're thinking of the Sony A9,
Yeah, I am.
A9 III. I was thinking of the Burano because the Burano was announced this year, but you can't buy a Burano. Like, they're not out yet.
Yeah. So I would say both of those. I should probably write it down because next year I'm going to forget.
Yep.
And I would say both of those probably are controversial and qualifying because I feel like both of those could easily have made spots on this list.
They're contenders for sure, but they're disqualified. So,
okay.
All right. What else?
Next one, secret rankings. I have no idea what your rankings are, and you nor I.
Yep.
And then lastly, here are the categories: Camera of the Year, Best Photo Camera, Best Budget, Best Hybrid Mirrorless for Video, Best Video Camera. The best hybrid is like hybrid mirrorless kind of thing. And then, so photo and video. Then Best Video Camera, and then Best Not Camera.
Okay.
So those are categories. And I don't think there needs to be any more rules here. And I think as we'll back and forth. And I think we end on Camera of the Year.
I think you're right.
And I would like to clarify that when we say, like, this is the best camera, definitely an opinion. And probably not the best camera because, like, you know, it's really subjective. It depends on what you're doing with your camera.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't agree with any of that.
Okay,
I think our opinion is correct.
Definitive?
Yes. And when we say Camera of the Year, that's the camera you should buy. You should ignore everything else on the list. Just get that camera.
Ignore your needs and what you're doing and your existing ecosystem.
Exactly.
Just wholeheartedly push forward.
All right. Where are we starting?
All right. Let's start. I'm going to start with, let's start with just the best not camera.
Okay.
We get a little weird here.
Yeah.
So not camera is a camera that's not a camera.
Yeah. Like not a traditional photo or video camera, like something else, but it has to take pictures or video.
Sure.
But yeah. So do you want to go first? Or do you want me to?
I want you to go first.
All right. Well, the one I had for this category, and I'm the one that came up with this category, and this was the camera I had in mind when I came up with it, is the Insta360 Go 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
Yeah. So the reason I picked it is because, I mean, I think, action cameras and drones and stuff are an obvious thing to consider here. And, there's a lot of different action cameras. We talked about them a week or two ago, and I felt like the Go 3 is one of the most unique ones that's come out. And it lets you do things that you can't do with any other camera. So I thought that was really cool. And I also think that they've done a really good job with just like, they have very well thought out accessories. There's easy ways to mount it on a hat or have like a little magnetic necklace around your neck, stuff like that. And I have one of these cameras and I like it a lot. And you can just get some cool shots with it. So
it seems like they've found a way, Insta360 has found a way to kind of carve out their own piece of this action cam market by doing interesting things to differentiate their products.
Yeah.
And the whole like wireless whatever and the pill being like, it's super, super cool. I still will regularly think about the Make Art Now video on that thing where he's like, I'm going to strap this thing to a rocket. And like he just found it and it totally worked.
Yep.
I don't know. It's very, very cool. And I think that's a really good option.
Yeah. And this is the third one they've made. And the 1 and the 2 were also good, but I feel like the 3 is when it finally hit, like price, capability and all that to really be a consideration for most people. Like, they did a good job.
That was one of those cameras that came out where I was legitimately excited about it. And I've still considered whether or not I should get one. And because I'm like thinking of ways that I could capture footage that are impossible for me to do now. And like it opens up new opportunities and like makes me excited to try different ways of like making video and capturing footage.
Yeah.
And so like it just inspires that creativity. And so for that reason, I think this is a really, really cool option.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. My pick for this best not camera category is the Inspire 3.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Because that drone is nuts. Like all the things they did with the moving propellers and like the tilt of the thing and whatever, and the extra radio distance thing and the micro precision of the movements and just the pure dynamic range of that sensor. That camera is crazy.
Normally drone footage is just not as good as what you capture with your camera, and it's like you're limited on how much you can use it because it just doesn't hold up if you zoom in. And the Inspire drones, and especially the Inspire 3, feels like it's on just a totally different level of actually being good footage.
Well, we've complained a lot about DJI this year about how it's just they have so many drone models and it feels like they're just kind of updating to update, and this camera is the same as last year's camera. Like, what's that different about it? And like the quality isn't getting that much better. The jump from the Inspire to the Inspire 3 and the release of that drone this year felt legitimately exciting and like revolutionary. Just like a huge step forward. It was a giant jump in spec, and the noise on the dynamic range that you can get off that center is like cinema quality. It's so good. And I thought it was super, super exciting.
Yeah.
So that's my best not camera this year.
I like it. It's a good choice.
All right.
Our two choices were at very different price points.
Yes, they were. The listeners can probably just go ahead and pick up both.
Yeah. Just, you want the Go 3 will be a rounding error on your purchase of the Inspire.
Yes, it will.
All right. What's next?
Well, since we're talking about really expensive cameras, let's talk about the best video camera of 2023.
So you didn't pick your little JVC camcorder thing?
No, it wasn't released this year.
Oh, good point. Okay.
I didn't even look at camcorders. I do not have a pulse on the camcorder market.
If you want something with 36 times optical zoom, that's where you got to look.
Like sometimes I think about doing a deep dive on camcorders like I did on film point and shoots.
Hey man, 2024 is going to be a long year. Plenty of time for that.
This is going to be
actually, we should probably add that to the list because that would be really interesting to like, what is that market? Are those cameras actually good? Should you consider one? We should add that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that on the list for
really
topics to talk about. And you tell me about your best video camera 2023.
All right. So, the Burano was on my mind, but I didn't. For one thing, I didn't think I could pick it because of the, because it's not buyable yet. And I also felt like that camera is just so expensive. It's just way out of reach for most people. My pick for this was the Red Komodo X.
Really?
And the reason I picked that is because
you didn't want to pick the Z Cam.
I didn't want to pick the Z Cam. That's very true.
Because you're not a big V Raptor guy.
Yeah. No, I thought the Komodo X was interesting because a lot of people want like those red colors, and or they just want that workflow, like, or they're looking to take like the next step, in their filmmaking journey, and they want to get into that world. And I thought it was cool that Red came out with the Komodo X to kind of like give people what they were looking for. And I mean, honestly, it's kind of unusual now to have these companies really feel like they're listening to what users want and giving them what they want. And the Komodo X feels like something where that happened. Because the Komodo came out before it, and then people started using that as their A cam. And so Red gave them, this better version that, is a little more expensive, but gives you, the things that you actually need to be an A cam. And it's $10K by itself. So, still pretty expensive, but, I thought that was a pretty good one.
I am shocked you didn't pick the Pocket Cinema 6K. I'm not shocked.
Yeah. I was so excited for that camera, but it just didn't, it didn't really hit the mark. And I mean, I feel like that Pocket 6K, I would have been in the target market for that. Because if it had been a really good camera, I would have considered buying one. And the fact that someone like me was not interested in it, it was kind of a bad sign.
Yeah, not too good. Did you know that they came out with a new Ursa Mini this year?
I did not know that.
Yeah, there's a new Ursa Mini Pro 12K where they added an optical low pass filter, but then basically the same as the one that came out in 2019.
Yeah.
So maybe that doesn't count.
Blackmagic is like so close. Like they've got all the building blocks. They just haven't put together the right thing yet.
Yeah, there honestly wasn't too many to pick for this category. I thought about going V-Raptor 35. The Burano was like the clear winner if it was out. I also went with the Komodo X, actually, just because of like all the reasons that you said, as far as it was cool where they're bringing this from the Komodo. And I had swore that camera had a rolling shutter. And then when I was looking at it, I think it is global still in the Komodo X. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's what I read. And like, I don't know, it's like if you're trying to get into that cinema world, this is like the bottom of the bucket for Red, but it's still a good option, and it's really exciting, and I like what they're doing.
Well, and I think that if you're trying to get into the cinema world, you at some point you want to take the leap into getting into like an actual like professional cinema camera workflow and the coloring and all that, and this seems like a good entry point.
I considered going with a ZV-E1 for this category.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I still think that camera is really exciting. Just taking all of the goodness of an FX3 and shoving it into like a tiny little vlog camera. Mm-hmm. I think that one's really appealing. And it comes in white. It's like, both of these cameras come in white.
Yep.
So
that's all you need.
Just get them both in white.
Yep.
All right. Let's do best hybrid mirrorless for video.
Yep. So on this one, I read the category as being like,
sorry, not just for video, but best mirrorless hybrid.
That's what I'm saying. I read the category as being like, you're going to mostly be shooting video on this thing.
Yeah, I probably should have been more careful about how I worded this, because I wanted to do like video camera and I wanted to do photo camera, but I wanted to be specific that like the camera that's shooting for photos doesn't have to only do photos, because I didn't want to like limit it to Leicas and Pentaxes.
Yeah, of course.
And Hasselblads. And so this one was like mirrorless, but like also it has video. Mm-hmm. But I understand how that could be confusing.
All right. So with that caveat in mind, the one that I picked for this category was actually the Sony ZV-E1.
It's so good.
Yeah, and for photos, it would not be a good choice because it only has a 12 megapixel sensor. But for the video side of things, I think it's a great choice. It's really small, and it's got a lot of good video features. It has that Sony A7S III sensor, so it's good in low light.
Overheats.
Yeah, it does overheat.
It's expensive.
But you get all the cool AI features, the reframing and, like multi-face mode and AI focus and all that. And I don't know, especially for vlogging, it just seems like a really solid all-around choice.
Because of how good, even still, like multiple years later, the FX3 and the A7S III are for video, and like the low light capabilities. If I needed something small, compact, portable, but still like really good image quality, I mean, like the ZV-E1 feels like a great option. It's like you can kind of tuck that thing away and you're getting like, it's small, like 4K, whatever, and like all this dynamic range, and you can shoot at these crazy ISOs. And it's like you get A7S III footage, but with like this tiny little thing. And so I really like it for a like small video option, because it just super holds up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. I obviously picked the S5 Mark II-X because Daniel, Panasonic is they're doing things. Things are happening over there at Panasonic. The L mounts, like, complete. It's the best mount, probably. All those Sigma lenses. And, like, we got Face Detect now. Just saying, that Lumix camera is so good.
It is.
It's one of the best bang for the buck cameras out there right now. Mm-hmm. And like, it doesn't have the resolution of like an R5, and it doesn't quite have the video chops of like a Z8, but it's really, really good.
Well, it's affordable too.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like $1,900.
The MSRP is $2,000. I've seen it on sale a few times recently for $1,700, somewhere in that range. It's a great deal.
Having like looked at the photos off that camera, it's just a really good photo camera.
Yeah.
It's so good for like, if you need 24 megapixels, full frame is what you need. Boy, like this is it. It's just that good. And then like, if you're going to shoot video, like those features are way better than anything anyone else has out there, because of like all the extra features with it and Vlog and all this stuff, and the colors are great. It's like, this is such a good all-arounder that I have a hard time not recommending it to people.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the few cameras in this list that we've had hands-on experience with this year. And I mean, yeah, I'm impressed with the image quality. I'm impressed with the build quality too. I mean, the body is, well designed and the buttons are all in good spots. And I mean, it's just a great camera. I mean, I've been tempted by it a few times. So just, we make jokes on this podcast a lot about me getting into Panasonic and L mount. And, even though we're waiting on the S1H Mark II, the S5 Mark II is so good. It feels like it could easily be your A cam, easily be a video camera. And yeah, I'm very impressed with that one.
Yep. But it's also like not at the expense of the photo side. It takes very good photos.
Yeah. Yep. Good choice.
All right. And well, thank you, Daniel. I'm sure that may or may not be the last time that camera shows up on this list.
Yeah. Who knows? Anything could happen.
Well, then, since we're talking about hybrid mirrorless, whatever, let's talk about photos.
Oh, okay.
So let's go. I'm going to skip over budget, and I want to see what the best photo camera.
Yeah. I kind of want you to go first on this because to be honest with you, I've got two possibilities here. And I have picked one as the top and then one as an honorable mention. But if you pick the other one, I might switch.
Okay, so I also have two. And I have a hunch that my two are neither of your two.
Oh, I'm sure that's the case. Well, you go first anyway. What you got?
I'm going to not say the GFX 100 the second. Just because
you wanted to, though. You definitely wanted
so much. I so much wanted to give like a little golden hat.
But tell me why you didn't.
The whole 14-bit, 12-bit controversy was a little bit.
That was too off-putting for you.
And they kind of sold it as like this whole new sensor thing, but in reality, it's basically the same sensor, but like slightly different. It's not as much faster than the old one.
Yeah.
Than they made it seem, and so I feel like they missold it, and I don't think it's totally exactly out, and also like it's maybe a little too niche. I mean, it's a $7,000 medium format camera, and it's probably going to take the best photos, but like, I don't know. I just don't think that it's the right thing for everybody.
I was considering that a lot in this list. I mean, we didn't put any price restrictions on this or anything, but like when I picked my video camera thing, part of it is I'm just not that interested in talking about cameras that none of us and people listening to this podcast are going to buy, and
sure.
I mean, I'm sure we have people that shoot medium format, and, I can imagine a world where one day, like you buy a medium format camera or something, but like, I don't know. It's just, that feels out of reach for most people.
That day may be closer than we think.
Anyway, so you didn't pick the GFX.
So I didn't pick that one. I picked
pick?
Something that's a little more mainstream.
Okay.
The Leica Q3.
Oh, I didn't see that coming.
60 megapixels. It's like, was it 27 millimeter, full frame, point and shoot, fixed lens. You can get multiple focal lengths because of how far it crops in. I mean, the Q3 was such a cool upgrade from the Q2. I think it has a tilty screen.
It's a big step.
Yeah, dude. And it's a Leica. I don't know. Like, if you're just looking for something that takes pictures, this is probably going to take some of the best pictures. And if you don't want to, if you're just doing photography and you don't want to deal with all that huffing and puffing and what have you, this one's got autofocus. I love this category, and I think that this is such a cool camera and such a cool upgrade from the Q2 that it's like if you just have $6,000 lying around,
and who doesn't really,
it's hard not to buy this camera.
I just got done saying I tried to make my choices approachable. And here you go.
I think who out there doesn't want a Q3?
Oh, I definitely want one.
Yeah,
I'm just not going to buy one.
It's like the photos look so good. Like, there's not too many cameras that can shoot 60 megapixels, Daniel.
That's true. There are a few, though.
And very few of them that are fixed lens full frame.
Yeah. Okay. With that caveat.
I don't know. I just, like, the Summilux lens on this thing is, like, it's just so good. It's so good, Daniel. And so I don't know. That's it. I don't really have any other good reasons. I love this camera. I don't think I've given it enough attention this year. And so I think that I'm going to name it my best photo camera of the year.
Man, big day.
Yep. I would have given it to the A7R5 if that had come out this year.
Well, funny enough. All right. So my choice, I'm going to tell you both mine because you told me both yours.
Yep.
So the one that I had picked as my choice was the Nikon Z8.
Nice.
And we've talked quite a bit about Nikon on this podcast, so we actually had an episode where we covered the Z8 in detail. Not going to go through all that again, but I felt like this was reasonably priced. It came out at $4,000. Right now, you can get it for $3,700, and it's very similar to like larger and more expensive Z9, and that was cool to see, just in terms of offering more value to your customers, not making people pay more for more features. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons I picked this was because of Nikon's lens ecosystem. Because when I think about a photo camera, a lot of what people use those for is things like sports and wildlife or, whatever. And Nikon has a great lens lineup. And I think that it's a good choice for stuff like that. We kind of joke about them not getting, enough attention, but I think for photos, they're easily competing with Canon and Sony and et cetera. And so I picked that one.
I think it's interesting, the cameras that didn't quite make it to the top of this list. The Z8 is phenomenal. It's like the stack sensor that's in that thing, and it's like 40 megapixels. It's just such a good camera.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other things though that came out this year, like the A7 RC.
So that was my honorable mention. It's actually A7CR.
Oh, I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry that the alphabet soup didn't make it out my mouth.
But so I thought that camera was really interesting because that one's 61 megapixels.
Yeah.
So it matches the Q3 on that.
Well, isn't it very similar to the A7R5, but like cheaper, smaller?
It is. Yeah. It's very similar. If you don't care about video, it's very similar to the R5, to the A7 R5, and it's $3,000.
Yeah.
It's small. Like, honestly, that is a great choice for a photo camera.
It is such a good choice for a photo camera. And I kind of wish I had honorable mentioned it as well, because I think that is a runner up there for best photo. And
it feels like it's just kind of, it came out and then it just kind of disappeared. Like, we haven't really heard people talking about it, but that seems like a really good camera.
Yeah. I mean, if I was like only into photos, I need good autofocus and high resolution, boy.
Or if you're in the Sony ecosystem, you got
Sure.
a bunch of Sony lenses, you want to buy a dedicated, really good photo camera. I'm not saying $3,000 is cheap, but it's more approachable than the high end options from some of the other brands.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're saving $1,000 over the Z8, which is the Nikon.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting. Neither of us even talked about yet the R6 Mark II.
Yeah. I just
like, if you're talking about, I want good lenses for photos.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Canon is still making some of the fastest zooms out there, and they're making really great glass. It's super, 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 super expensive, sure, it's only 24 megapixels, but the R6 Mark II is still a very good camera.
I just had a hard time getting excited about the stuff Canon released this year.
Sure.
I mean, with a lot of these categories, if we weren't limiting ourselves to things that came out in 2023, I probably would have picked a different option. On several of them. Like, best hybrid mirrorless for video, I probably would not have picked a camera from this year.
Yeah, probably the XH2S. Camera of the year 2022.
And Canon released several cameras. They released a lot of lenses, but I just had a hard time really being interested in them. And R6 Mark II kind of is in that category, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Do any of those cameras wirelessly charge when you set them on a pad?
Probably not.
Like a Q3 does.
Oh my gosh.
It's so cool. Anyway. Okay. We got two more, right? So best budget and then the big one.
Yep.
So best budget camera,
now
2023.
This is pretty hard, right? Because what does budget mean?
Who knows? I mean, some might say that the S5 Mark II would be it because it's like the best bang for the buck. I'm not one of those people, but somebody might say that.
Somebody might say the Leica Q3's budget for them. Who knows?
Yeah, sure.
Anything could happen.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, again, a hard category to decide. I'm curious if you picked the one that I didn't pick, but the one I picked was the Sony A6700.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
And I
guess because the X-T5 came out last year.
I might have picked something like that. But the X-T5 is expensive.
How much is Sony paying you?
Yeah, and even the A6700 is $1,400. To me, that feels high for budget.
Isn't the Canon R8 cheaper?
I don't think it's probably around the same price.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like, one reason I picked this is because it's small. And I feel like if you want to take a camera with you, if you're just getting into photography and, learning about it, then you want to be able to take your camera everywhere you go. I felt like that's probably good. It has good improvements over the previous A6000 cameras. They've added more buttons and wheel and stuff. But the big thing for me is that it has some of those cool features from the ZVE1. So you get some of those AI features, the auto cropping and stuff. That would probably be fun if you're just getting into this stuff. And you get good video features. So you get 10-bit 422, log profile, like it can do all that, table stakes video stuff. So I don't know. I just felt like it was a good all-around choice. If you're buying your first camera, again, $1,400 with no lens isn't cheap, but you do get quite a bit for your money.
Yeah, it's legitimately a good option and a very good camera for a lot of people. I have so much heartburn around the A6700, and I don't know why. I do know why, but I don't know why. And like on sale, maybe $300 more, you could get like an R8 or a Lumix S5 Mark II. And I feel like both of those cameras are so worth the extra money to get to them. And so,
but you can play that game all day. It can always be like, if you spend a few $100s more, you can get this.
Sure. But like just that for the price point. And then for so many things and for so many reasons, I often feel like unless you just absolutely need the autofocus, the Fuji options in APS-C land are just more exciting and more better and more value for money.
Well, the lenses certainly are.
Than the A6700. And so I have a hard time like picking that over something like an S20 or an XT4 used or that sort of thing.
So XT4 used would not have qualified for what we're doing today.
Sure. Well,
XS20 would have, because that did come out this year.
So like best budget camera 2023, obviously, like that aside, when thinking about the A6700 in like the context of what it's like, it's an APS-C camera. I feel personally attacked as a Fuji shooter whenever people pick that camera over a Fuji camera, and I shouldn't, and I don't know why.
Well, the thing is, especially in this category, somebody's listening to this show and, I want to buy a camera. I'm interested in a budget camera. I would not buy a camera from 2023 as your first camera or as a budget camera, because I feel like you can save a lot of money by buying something from last year and probably get a better camera. Like, you mentioned like a used XT4 or something like that. Like you're going to be able to get that for cheaper. You can buy some lenses with it. It's going to be better than the A6700 in some ways. Like, if you're on a budget, looking used or at least looking at older models is definitely a good idea.
I guess that's a really good point as far as this category, like best budget camera 2023. It's like, ooh, these are going to be really good options next year.
Yeah.
Because like, you're right. I mean, it's always the thing of like, do I buy the higher end model that's used from like the previous year? Or do I buy the current like low end model? And sometimes there's weird overlaps there and it gets kind of weird.
Yeah.
So,
well, what'd you pick?
I picked the EOS R50.
Oh, okay.
Because
so what made you choose that?
It's less than $1,000. And I feel like a lot of times whenever we're talking to people and they're like getting into photography or that sort of thing, it's like, what can I buy that's $1,000 or what can I buy that's $1,500? Here's my budget.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to get somebody into a lens and a body for that. And while I don't love the EOS R mount options for like these cheap zooms,
well, that's why I didn't pick it.
They still exist, and like you can get a 50-1.8 and the 80 f2, and you can get this like the 24-105, like f4 to f7.1. Those are all less than $800, I think, like reasonably cheap lenses. And I think that the R50 is a really good value for what you get as far as like camera and capabilities and that sort of thing. Because out the door, it's like what, $650 or something?
Yeah, it is pretty cheap.
And so to me, like as far as cameras released this year that are in that budget class, I think the R50 kind of wins it.
I was glad to see Canon finally hit that lower market with both cameras and lenses, because for a long time, the only stuff they had there was their old stuff. Like they had the M50, but within the past year, you would not have wanted to buy an M50 because it was clearly like not long for this world.
It felt like that was all they released this year was filling out that low line.
It does feel that way.
To me, like the only misstep for Canon this year was the R100.
Yeah. I don't understand that camera.
It's such a weird camera. But like ignoring that, like the R50 and the R8, the R6 Mark II, they're all good.
Yeah, they are.
They brought out some cheaper lenses. They brought out some really expensive ones too, but like they're starting. It's like feels like they're starting to get there.
Yeah, I had a hard time getting excited about what they were doing, but it's an improvement over the past.
Nice. All right. So do you want to say the camera of the year for 2023 at the same time, since we probably both picked the same one, or do you want to like go first and I go second, or vice versa?
I don't know. Let's go one at a time. But you just tell me if we ended up with the same one, we'll just talk about it as one thing.
Okay.
So I think it was a little suspicious that you said the S5 Mark II X as your video camera, but I picked the S5 II not X as my camera of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't pick that one.
You didn't pick that one.
No.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, not to rehash it all because we literally just talked about it, but mostly I picked that because I think it was a really big release for Panasonic. And I think it kind of put them back on the map for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me excited about what they're doing next. But even if you don't care about any of that, even if none of the market industry stuff matters to you, I just think it's a really good camera.
It's a really good camera, Daniel.
Like, to be honest, I'm curious to see what you picked that is better than that.
Oh, geez.
So
come on.
Let's hear it.
Like, I feel like if things had kind of fallen differently, and like I was so excited about the XH2S. Like I had my heart set on that thing for like a year waiting for that to come out. And if the XH2S and the S5 Mark II had come out at the same time, I would have probably switched to Panasonic.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like or strongly considered
Yeah.
it. Because I could see myself having like going the X100V route,
Mm-hmm.
and then like having a Panasonic as my work camera.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could still see that happening for me. Like I could see replacing the XH2S with the S5 Mark II and being totally happy with that.
It'd be so good.
And that's even ignoring that they're probably going to come out with an S1H Mark II that'll be even better for video. Like, I mean, it's a pretty compelling system.
Yep. I could also see a world where I will use the camera of the year 2023, which you may be surprised to know is not the S5 Mark II, but is indeed the Nikon Z8.
Oh, interesting. I'm so glad you didn't pick some obscure film camera that I've never heard of. At least this is a camera that I've seen before.
Nikon is just not really releasing much, but they took all the goodness of the Z9, which is such a good like the read speed and the resolution and the video features and beating internal RAW lawsuits and like all the things. The Z8, like, it has it all. Sure, it's a $4,000 camera, but it is an incredible photo camera.
Yeah.
Their autofocus is getting better and better. It has all the video specs you could need. It can shoot 8K. It does all the things. It is so complete as a package and just great. Like I have no notes. Fantastic camera. Maybe put a shutter in it so you don't get weird lines because it's not global sensor. But I thought that, that camera really, when they came out with it, it's like, okay, Nikon's still serious about this. They're not like on their heels. It sure takes them forever to come out with a camera. And where's our Z7 and our Z6 Mark III or whatever? But the Z8 is, I don't know. To me, like, that's it. That was the complete package.
Mm-hmm.
That was the camera of the year.
It does have really good video features too.
It does. It has fantastic video features. Like I'm saying, if you're in the hybrid market world, or like if you just need something for photo, you need a hybrid. It's the Z8. If you need something that's just for video, like maybe I would still consider it because it does do the raw internal and it has 8K and all this sort of thing, and I like it. I like it a lot for camera of the year.
Yeah.
And I think that it's probably outside of the price budget for a lot of people, but for, high-end $4,000 cameras, but not the highest of the high end. I don't know. I think a lot of people would agree with me, Daniel.
Yeah. I think a lot of our listeners would.
I was very careful to make my list before I started reading and listening to the other camera of the year lists from other people.
Well, what have you learned since then, though?
That I'm not the only one who picked the Z8.
Interesting.
And I'm worried that because this is going to come out after all that content comes out, people are going to think I'm like a Nikon shill or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying that I was a Nikon shill way before all these other people. See Nikon Cast episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And yeah, no, I like what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean,
Which
I haven't looked at
I couldn't have said that last year.
I haven't looked at any of those lists, and I mean, I had it on mine. You know, it was one of my other picks, and I mean, I think it's a great camera.
I think this, like November last year, the amount of just crap that we were giving to Nikon, like it's kind of come full circle.
Yeah,
I did not go into 2023 thinking that I was going to pick a Nikon camera for my camera of the year.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
So you kind of said earlier that, you know, you could see yourself using the camera of the year 2023. I mean,
yeah.
Tell me more about that. You think you'd ever buy this camera?
I don't think I would, mostly because I don't know. I don't think I would ever buy it because of like all the lenses and all the things. And it's really, Nikon is still to me a more like sports wildlife type of thing. And I think I would much rather be in an L-mount ecosystem because of, like, if I love fast primes, and Sigma makes the fastest primes, and they make really, really good primes. And to me, like, that's where I want to be if I was going to move like full frame and change camera ecosystems. But the Z8 really is the whole package. And like for all the things that I shoot, like the video is really good, and you get that solid and raw, and it's like such a good photo camera that I don't know, I could honestly see myself using a Z8.
Yeah, it would certainly meet all your needs.
I like that Nikon has that extra trinity of zooms that we talked about. That they finished that lineup this year, where like they have the f4s and they have the f2.8s, but then they have these like weird 2.8s that are smaller and lighter.
Yeah, which I'm super into as an idea. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly, but it's like a 70 to 180 instead of a 7200, or like it's 17 to 30 instead of like 15 to 35 or whatever. Like they're slightly different in their focal ranges, but you gain like a pound on a lot of these lenses, and I like that. I like that they're doing like weird, interesting things on their zooms.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Fuji is that their lenses are small and light.
Yep.
And so it's neat that Nikon's doing that, you know, with full frame lenses as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And just as a user, it's nice to have options. Like that was kind of my complaint about Canon for so long, is that you could only buy the super expensive RF mount stuff. And so it's cool that they provide options like in this whole range.
Definitely. Okay.
Big year for cameras.
Yeah, big year for cameras. I think next year gonna be bigger.
I mean, it's possible. So I mean, like we talked last week when we kind of reviewed the camera brands, and I mean, especially when I was going through trying to pick the things for this list, I mean, Sony's just like everywhere. You know, it feels like they made so many cameras, but then there were other brands like Fuji that really didn't seem like they released a whole lot. And I'm really curious to see what we get next year.
I could not believe the number of Sony cameras that came out this year, and Canon cameras for that instance. I just like kept listing A cameras and EOS cameras. It's just nuts.
Yeah, but you think next year's gonna be bigger, huh?
Yeah, I do. I think that, you know, with the Olympics coming out, you know, in August, a lot of these camera companies, especially the ones that make pro cameras, I mean, they all kind of make their own version of pro camera. Like this is going to be it for, you know, advertising that camera.
Yeah.
And I think the EOS R1 is going to come out next year.
Finally.
And I think they're waiting for the thing. I heard an interesting take that it's like, what if, you know, the EOS R3 was meant to be the R1, and then they like chickened out at the last minute.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting. There's also rumor out there that the R1 is going to be global sensor also, and that maybe Canon was that's why Sony rushed out their global, and Canon's mad about it.
Could be.
Who knows? I don't know.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. It's either going to be like super fast and super stacked, or it's going to be a global sensor.
Yeah.
And I know the R1, like that's going to be a crazy camera for next year. And then I think we're probably going to see something else from Nikon. I think we're probably going to see the Z6 Mark III, but I bet they're going to come out with like a Z1 or a Z9 or something that's like another top of the line thing to kind of advertise around the Olympics.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it'll have been long enough that they might have, you know, advanced something to where that makes sense.
Yep. And then not like, it feels like it's too soon for a lot of these new top end cameras, but like the last one to talk about is the Sony, right? Like if our Canon comes out with the R1, like Sony's probably going to come out with an A1 Mark II, which would feel weird in the shadow of the A9 Mark III.
Yeah.
But I still think the A9 Mark III is a little too specialty. Like I think the global sensor it's like the newest version of this technology. It's like folding phones, and it's going to be like super, super cool. But for a lot of people, the cost of dynamic range and noise performance is not going to be worth it compared to what you can get out of like a 50 or 60 megapixel full frame sensor.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like they're pushing the envelope forward with that camera, but maybe not in the way that people want for something like Olympic shooting.
I think we all want it, especially for Olympic shooting, but I just don't think it's going to be there yet. Like we won't see until March. Like things it's just not out yet. So I don't know. Maybe like the A9 Mark III is going to be their Olympic camera, but I could see them coming out with an A1 Mark II.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that happening. Obviously, the one I'm waiting for the most is S1H Mark II. It feels like it's overdue already, and I really want to see that camera.
What do you think they're going to do to that line? Do you think that they're going to do the same thing, like release an S1 Mark II, an S1H, and an S1R, or do you think they're going to like roll it all together and just do one camera, like do a S1H and an S1?
I don't know what to expect. It's always been confusing to me that they had all those different cameras because they just really didn't seem that different. So I just don't know. I would imagine they might, merge them together, but I don't know.
We have all of these camera companies in the L-mount alliance, but like Sigma feels like they're never going to release their Foveon camera. And you have like Panasonic that's actually making cameras, and then you have Leica that just does Leica things and whatever. But like, it's basically all these L-mount lenses for Panasonic.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a competitive camera to like the R5 or the A7 R5 or like the Z8 and that, $4,000 high-end, high megapixel full frame with good autofocus L-mount camera, there just isn't one.
Yeah.
And to me, like that gap of like what could be with an S1R Mark II it would be perfect. It would slot in right there, and like now you can use all these fantastic Sigma lenses that you've always wanted to use, and here's your high resolution photo camera. And it feels like it's just as needed as the S1H. I'm more excited about the S1H because of video, but I think the S1R is as equally as important.
I guess I just don't hear about it much, and I must not be in the right circles because I feel like I don't hear too much about these high-end photo cameras at all. I mentioned that about the A7 RC or CR earlier, but I guess I don't have a good grasp on how popular the S1R is.
I think it's bread and butter for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who shoot R5s, people who do like safari stuff or portraits or that sort of thing. There are people who need high resolution, something that's more than 24 megapixels.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to print your work, like you want to be shooting.
But do you think
resolution.
that the S1R specifically is a popular camera?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
But I think that L-mount has gotten so filled out that there isn't anything in that spot in the market for the people who are wanting to invest into L-mount lenses, who want to get into Sigma and that sort of thing, and they want a really good like high megapixel photo camera.
Yeah.
And they don't want to pay for a Leica. And so it's like I think that's what has to go there is it's a Panasonic.
I guess you're right. I mean, they're pretty much it. So we'll see.
Or maybe Sigma just comes out with this Foveon.
Maybe.
And it's or maybe they give it up and they come out with a Bayer sensor. That's like the whole thing.
I will believe that when I see it.
It's never going to happen. I don't know. There seems like there might be a lot of other things coming out this next year. The one that everyone keeps talking about is the new, X100 whatever, X100R, whatever they're going to call it.
Yeah, that feels almost like a sure thing.
I still feel like I'm going to have to pre-order that camera. I don't think it's the right camera for me. I still think that I would be better off selling my X-T3 and buying like an X-T5 and that just being my small carry around camera, because I know that it's like way bigger than an X100, but I would have trouble justifying buying a replacement for my X-T3 if I bought an X100.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem for you is that you like to use different primes and stuff. And I mean, obviously we've talked at length about your lens collection. So it's hard to imagine you just having a fixed lens camera.
I feel like successfully landing a pre-order for that camera would be like printing money.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably right. You could just scalp it.
I mean, with Fuji's inability to make cameras successfully, come out with them and produce them and then not have to stop production because of pre-orders, I feel like if you could get your paws on one of those and hold it for like 6 months, you could sell it for double the price.
I saw somebody selling an X100V today for $2,000, so I think you're right.
Yep. I'm just saying, like, if that thing comes out and it's like less than $1,500, whew, I'm probably gonna pre-order one.
I don't think it'll be less than $1,500.
You don't think it'll be less? Isn't the original one like $1,200 or
Well,
something?
yeah, but think about all the camera prices this year. Everything's got more expensive.
True, but I know that like Fuji would love to fancy themselves as like a Leica type company.
Yeah.
But I cannot imagine them selling a fixed lens APS-C camera for more than $1,500.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe that's the price point, $1,499 or something silly.
It could be.
And people are paying that for the old one.
Yeah, that's true.
I know. Is there anything else on this list here of things that might be coming out next year that you're excited about?
I mean, there's definitely more stuff on the list. There's a lot of cameras that, have been rumored and all that, but I think we've pretty much covered the main ones. We'll see what happens. And I think most of these brands will have something new next year. Some of the ones are pretty obvious, like, Sony's probably going to release like an A7 IV or something, but I think we hit a few of the highlights.
So I do think one last thing to kind of mention on this topic is cinema cameras from Canon. I think that next year is going to be like a Canon cinema year in a way.
Well, they released those cinema primes this year, so maybe that's paving the way.
Very true. And we've talked about whether or not they were going to come out with, what was it? It was like the C300 Mark III and the C200 Mark II or something like that. I forget exactly.
I kind of lose track of those specific versions.
I lose track of them too, but it's like the next version of those cinema cameras. And like one of them was supposed to have an interchangeable sensor. And it was like all these rumors about it.
I do remember
and
that now.
It kind of got pushed towards the end of the year. Like everyone thought it was going to be the end of this year. I think it's going to happen next year. There was another rumor that was floating around that they may come out with a C50.
Interesting.
Which is essentially a repackaged, cheaper, smaller C70.
Yeah. Now I'd be into that idea because I love this idea of a more affordable box style, or a dedicated video camera. Let's just say that.
Because the C70 is not box style, but it's got like this weird Chonko back and it does have a handle to it.
It's sort of like pseudo.
Yeah.
Box.
There was a rumor that the C50 might be a box camera. So like could be an interesting thing that we see. I don't know.
Because I mean, if I still had RF lenses, I would probably be eyeing the C70. But it's just a little bit too expensive.
It's still some of the best dynamic range you can get in that price point, that style camera in Super 35.
Yeah.
Like it has crazy good dynamic range, and that dual gain on that sensor is super good.
Mm-hmm.
And so like even though those specs are like 2 years old or something, they could just re-release that in a smaller, cheaper form factor, and it would still be highly competitive and a very, very good camera.
Yep. Yeah, so that could be interesting.
So I'm excited about that cinema stuff. I'm mostly, I think, excited about the Fuji thing because I'm in a Fuji world.
Yeah.
And I want firmware updates for my XH2S that add all of those GFX 100, the second features.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
I want to see that X100V, and I want to see an X Pro 4. But that's just me. No one else cares. I'm the only one that cares, and I just need them to satiate my constant demand for new technology.
Yep. Well, I'm definitely going to have my eye on Panasonic, and I'm really curious to see what they come out with. And this was such a big year for them with the S5 Mark II that I'm really interested to see how they follow that up.
Do you see any new camera purchase stuff on your horizon for next year? Is there like a lens or a camera that you're just waiting on besides the S1H Mark II?
Yeah, I mean, really, I could see myself buying something to use as a dedicated video camera.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I for sure will, but I mean, by that, let's say by like next July, the XH2S will be 2 years old. I use it a lot for our work. And for one thing, I would love to have a backup, and I think that would be helpful at this point. But just in general, I'd like to expand into having a second camera so that I can have a dedicated photo setup and video setup. And it seems like it would be nicer in a lot of ways. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. See what they release.
I'm still trying to find that perfect, circa 2013 high-end cinema camera that you can buy for $4,000 now and then sell it at you on this podcast and have you be like, actually, maybe I do need a Cine Alta F55. That's my goal.
We'll see what happens.
Yep. And lastly, how many film cameras do you think I will own by the end of next year?
Oh my gosh.
Knowing that when the Minolta comes in, I will own 3 currently.
I think you will, on top of those, I think you'll buy 2 more.
You're going to buy 2 film cameras?
I mean, they may be $50 whatevers, but yeah, that's my guess.
I can't
I can't
deny it.
You think it's going to be much higher, don't you? You think
no, it sounds right. No, I feel like
some zeros.
I mean, I feel like I'm definitely going to be investing in like development stuff and a scanner.
Yep. Yeah, I see that coming too.
Oh, geez.
What? Any other camera purchases on your mind?
I feel like
you need some more Fuji lenses, surely.
I feel like I'm finally whole when it comes to all my Fuji lenses. I didn't buy that.
I think I've heard that before.
I didn't buy that 100 to 400, and I've been eyeballing jealously your 75 1.2.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I like if a 35 millimeter 1.4 with a clutch, like that original, like the first X mount lens, just kind of appeared before me, and it was like a reasonable 650 or less. That'd be hard for me to say no.
Yeah. You always have a list.
I'm just saying that, like, if that's the last one. If I bought that one, I would have all of them, Daniel. I would have all the. Well, that's not all of them, but I would have most of the original primes. It'd be like a collection. I have a problem.
Yeah, shocking. Your answer here is that you're going to buy more Fuji lenses.
I'm going to focus my energy on sub $100 film cameras.
Yep. Auto boy, here we come.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, and if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.